limits, man. Okay, calm down.
We are bringing on another great guest, and this woman is also challenging the system. In particular, she's challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She is running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. She is a former Zionist and challenging an extremely Zionist congresswoman, an extremely corrupt congresswoman, Jen Perelman. Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are you, Katie?
Good, you?
Good. I was really enjoying your interview. He was awesome.
Yeah, he's great. So brave. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So tell us about your race right now. What made you want to run against Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
I never really wanted to run against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, which is interesting. And I never really wanted to, and I still don't want to, be in Congress. That's not like my career ambition. It's not a goal. I was asked back in 2019 from some people in our progressive caucus down here, and we did pretty well. We got close to 30% in the pandemic and raised, let me say $400,000. And that was really not knowing anything about what we were doing, just based on obviously dissatisfaction, as well as just wanting to do service, that's the whole premise of what I'm doing, is transforming politics into service. So I didn't want to run in 22, even though we did well in 20, just because our district was getting reshifted from the census. So I waited, and it's a good time. I feel like it could be a perfect storm. She's been sitting there for over 20 years. She takes so much corporate money, all the same things that I was fighting for in 2020, that I've been fighting for since Bernie for years. We're still not having those. I thought this could be, an opportunity for a perfect storm.
Well, according to the AIPAC tracker, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has received up to $921,255 from AIPAC throughout her career. Is AIPAC getting involved in this race?
No, and that's what's so fascinating. There's a lot of different variables, because I actually started thinking about this back in 22. Like strategizing, and if I'm going to run again, how am I going to handle the Israel issue? Because even long before October 7th, I knew that if I ran again, there was going to be my issue. I have an Israel issue that I would call it, as far as like candidate viability in Jewish South Florida, right? Like, how was I going to handle that? So I've been paying attention to this for quite some time. And I just sort of went on the offensive with it in the first place, and just started my whole own Deconstructing Zionism series, just sort of, really proactively baiting AIPAC. When this was in October of 22. Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I did one of those.
On that, yeah. So this is something I went on the offense with, knowing that that's like, okay, then I'm at least controlling the narrative. That nobody's going to dig something up and be like, oh, Jen's not for Israel. People are like, yeah, there was a whole series on it, right? So it wouldn't be a thing. But you would think they'd care about keeping somebody like me out. And I think they must. I mean, they must be concerned. But the problem is that Debbie doesn't want any attention drawn to this race, never has. Her whole strategy is pretending that nothing is happening. She doesn't acknowledge that there's a primary.
Right.
And so she doesn't want any attention drawn to this race, because she knows that she's not likable. For all I know, AIPAC realizes that too. I mean, they can probably read the numbers, Right. I mean, she's not likable. So at the end of the day, they know that if they bring attention to this race, that could work against them. And the difference is that the other races where they're really getting involved was them trying to unseat incumbents. And, I don't know. I mean, they could be underestimating what we're doing. I don't know. I have no idea. But they haven't started with me.
Interesting. Well, let's take a look at this video that you put out, which speaks to how unapologetic you are about your Israel position.
This is me at 16 years old in Israel on a high school trip, holding an assault rifle, and this is the definition of indoctrination. I grew up in North Miami Beach. I grew up in a very insulated, very Jewish community. We were taught that Palestine and Palestinians, that's not a real thing, that was made up by Arabs. Everybody over there that wasn't Jewish was just Arabs. But the message was always clear that Jews were not safe and that the Arabs wanted to hurt us. My relatives, my great-grandmother, my grandmother were raised with this fear mentality that without the state of Israel, Jews around the world will not be safe. True history was kept from us. We were propagandized. But as I grew older, I began to see a different reality unfolding. I witnessed the rise of the Israeli lobby, exerting its influence on our politics and policies. I learned about the injustices happening thousands of miles away in the name of Jewish people. And I can't stay silent in the face of such injustice. The right to return denied to so many Palestinians. The war fueled by the Israeli government and sanctioned by our own country, condemned by the UN and the International Court of Justice as genocide. We cannot turn a blind eye to this injustice any longer. To me, atonement is really taking accountability for your participation in something that you now realize was not correct in some way and wronged people in some way. I participated in an ethnic cleansing state. I do not feel powerless. I feel hopeful. It is time for us to use our voices, to stand in solidarity with the oppressed, to demand accountability from our leaders. As a candidate, as a mother, as an ally, I pledge to fight for justice and equity for everyone, here at home and abroad. For there can be no peace without true justice. I'm Jen Perelman. I'm running for Congress, Florida's 25th district.
So great ad. Love the photos. And, you know, we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth revisiting. Do you remember a moment where you started to really question the narrative?
You know, it wasn't one thing, but it was in the early 2000s. And part of the problem with this is that I also had my first child was born in 2000, my second in 2006. So the whole time is such like a brain blur to me, just in general, based on what was going on in my life. And that's when it was going on. And I was just realizing it was around the time I was seeing stuff from the second Intifada. I was hearing about the anti-BDS legislation. So I started investigating BDS and just looking into what was that. And just those things where I started to realize, okay, we're not the good guys. But it really wasn't until in 2020 even where I realized that the entire two-state solution was just never even meant to be real. Like the whole thing was just a sham, you know? So it was sort of it was a process.
Like Gideon Levy, I bring this up all the time, but it's so smart. He says that everyone who's now for the two-state solution was against it when it was viable.
Yeah. Well, it was never real. It was always put out there as just a Zionist talking point to somehow justify their land theft.
Yeah. You know, someone wrote a comment I want to respond to. Victims, they've always been the aggressors. So in Israel, yes, but not, I mean, I think what makes this it's not complicated. It just makes it a story that requires some explanation. Because when like a settler colonial society is obviously a settler colonial society, with Israel, they have this amazing get out of jail free card, which is that they did face a lot of anti-Semitism. But they were victims, but they're not victims in Israel.
No, not only that, but that was the only place where they were ever safe and they felt safe and they were actually like protected, and their Muslim and Christian, Arabic, you know, all the other peoples there were their friends.
Right.
And so no, they were safe there.
Right. Until they turned it into a Jewish only state. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the role of AIPAC in the defeats of Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman?
You know, it's upsetting because we're watching just how disgustingly bought everything is and how easy it just seems like it's for sale. Which on one hand, I'm glad that we're seeing. I'm glad people are seeing it because it's been the case for a long time. So now it's just so, you know, blatant. But it's unfortunate. But then I also agreed with something that he said, your guest said, was that there are other variables. And AIPAC needs to be registered as a foreign agent. This should not be happening at all. I mean, the whole thing is just, absurd to me. But like, for example, I don't know as much about Corey's district. I know that Jamal was redistricted, and that redistricting also did affect his demographics. Also, and I say this all the time to people when they ask me about other races, I never know what other people's ground games look like. And that's what people don't understand. It isn't just about the social media and what you see. It's about the ground game. And you just never know. That's the truth. And I don't know. I don't know what their ground game looked like and how many doors they knocked. So, yeah.
Right.
But no, it's a disaster with AIPAC.
Why aren't they? You're a lawyer by trade, right? Why? Can you explain why they're not registered as a foreign lobbying entity?
The justification is, or the technicality is that it's American money. It's American funded. So it's from American accounts, American people. And it's on to help Americans based on what they, their relationship with Israel. It's their support of our relationship with it. This is the technicality. And basically, because it's supported by American citizens and funded by American citizens. So if it was funded from foreign money, then they would.
Israel actually doing it, paying for it.
Is Israel doing that?
No, I'm saying if it were Israel really providing the money, because to be fair, it is really American Jews who are doing it. I mean, there's a Christian Zionist thing, and then you have the Jewish Zionist thing, which is AIPAC. Oh, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's international, and the evangelicals and all of that. Like, it's definitely a worldwide thing.
They have their own lobby.
Yeah, they definitely
Christians
fund that.
United for Israel,
Yeah. But technically, when they have to file their papers, their money is coming from here.
Right.
So they get away with it, even though what they're doing now has been contradicted in terms of what's in the best interest of our country by so many experts that I can't eat. I mean, you've had a ton of people on your show. I know I've had people on my show about this. So what they're doing is against American interests. So I'd love to bring up this issue again. The other part about it, though, is the other person or the only president that ever really challenged AIPAC was JFK.
Right. But it was called something else then, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And that.
But in terms of trying to force them to register as foreign agent.
Right.
Yeah. So that didn't work out too well.
Right. For JFK. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Brad is texting me very satisfied because he brought that up the other day.
What?
The JFK and the Israel.
Oh. It's true, though. I mean, it's true. And the history runs deep. I mean, have you read Mearsheimer's book?
The Lobby? Yeah.
Yeah. So like that was the first like big kind of book I read on that covered that. And then I started digging deeper. But yeah, that's just very, very deep tentacles.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you can't say that word. It's anti-Semitic. Remember when Greta Thunberg got into trouble? Because she had like a plushie octopus in a photo.
She said tentacle? How is
no, she had a plushie octopus.
But what does that have to do with anti-Semitic?
I mean, they say it's a trope.
Okay, in my 53 years of life, I have never heard of anything having to do with octopus or tentacles as a trope for Jewish people.
Yeah. I'm just telling you. So I wanted to.
Okay, now
I'm make you aware. Yeah.
All right.
It was the American Zionist Council.
That's right.
And it was founded in 1949, and it represented 9 nationwide Zionist organizations. And it was founded as a tax-exempt umbrella organization of American Jewish groups, which focused on Israel and included the Zionist Organization of America, Hadassah, and other Zionist organizations. In 1962, Robert F. Kennedy, the United States Attorney General, forced AZC to register as a foreign agent. In doing so, they were barred from making monetary contributions to U.S. officials, but continued to send out newsletters and hold events with a nonprofit tax exemption. In 1966, AZC was dissolved after regulatory changes revoked tax exemption for foreign agents. Its former subsidiary, AIPAC, continues to operate.